What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is another bonus episode of Hip Hop Now podcast brought to you by the supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. The link to that website is in the description of this episode. And it's very important. You know why? Because not only do you support this podcast by helping it grow from a production standpoint, but you also get direct input into how it's made, that being hardware. But today, most importantly, subject matter. So for those who don't know, I put out a post on my Patreon account asking my current Patreon supporters to give me ideas of bonus episodes they like to hear. And I got a couple of ideas, and those shows are on the way. But this is one idea that I was thinking about, honestly, for years. And I just felt like the time wasn't right. Well, now is the time. Big shout out to Laverne Tate, who gave us this idea of how about doing a Legends in the Making episode. As you can see from the cover art, that is what we're doing. Now, the whole Legends in the Making thing is tricky. Let's start with the word legends. What does a legend mean? Well, let's look up the definition. Legend or legends, defined by dictionary.com, means a non-historical or unverifiable story handed down by tradition from earlier times and popularly accepted as historical. That last part is the key. Let's get into a couple of other ones as they throw ads up on my screen. The body of stories of this kind, especially as they relate to a particular people, group, or clan. Here's another one. An inscription, especially on a coat of arms, on a monument, under a picture, or the like. That's kind of like y'all tweets when y'all call everybody the GOAT or whatever. But let's go back to that first definition, right? A non-historical or unverifiable story handed down by tradition from earlier times and accepted as historical. Now, granted, you know, like I know, doesn't necessarily sound like a definition for hip hop, but it kind of is, right? We live in a time where people are referred to as the GOAT. We know a time not that long ago, only one person could be the GOAT. The greatest of all time meant one person. The person that rise to the top out of everyone else who was great. This person is the greatest of the great, right? But nowadays, people use it as a term of endearment to mean they really like someone. So they'll call everyone the GOAT. Fine. Legend is different. Legend is more so not used in that way. Some people might, but I think it becomes even more debated because it's less used. But legend is different in the hip hop game because it suggests that you have a certain level of popularity, right? It doesn't matter if it's pop success or just the admiration of the hip hop community, right? Based on your work, not a single, not an album, but your body of work, your catalog, the features you've done, soundtrack songs you've done, everything you've done is taken into account. And you've had impact. Now, I know this sounds like a GOAT description, and it kind of is, right? If you're the greatest of all time, you're definitely a legend. But nevertheless, all these things play a part in why we call certain people a legend. But most importantly, importantly, when you're talking about historical, you're talking about history, right? Those words mean the same thing, but when you're using those kinds of words, you're talking about time. And in order to call someone a legend in my book, or the greatest of all time, but especially a legend, since that's what we're talking about, you need time. You need time to observe their career, their body of work, their level of impact through the years. And there was a time where it was a new generation of rappers that came out that were fresh and new to us, and we liked them out the gate for various reasons, right? And I'm just going to name, let's just say there was a top 5, right? And you can throw other people in that group, but mainly this was the top 5, right? Of that crop of new cats. Meek Mill, Wale, Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar. All went on to have varying degrees of success. But would you call all 5 of them legends at this point in their career? Most people don't, because they really only talk about the big 3. Now, for a long time, not for a long time, but let me just say that it seemed like Drake was the shining star out of those. But then there was sort of like a balance of success, right? Because Drake is the most successful out of the group, but that is debatable at this point in time, because so is Kendrick Lamar. It's just a different level of success. Drake is more popular, right? But in some regards, you can argue that Kendrick is just as popular, but just in a different way, with a different crop of fans, right? J. Cole also is very popular, with a different set of fans from the other two, which usually seems impossible. But I think it's because they are so uniquely different from one another, and they've done great things in their career with their albums, that we give them props for many things. So let's just start, right? To me, those are the 3 legends in the making, if you will, but may have already kind of obtained that legendary status. It's like sports, right? When Steph won his 4th championship, finally got his finals MVP, you already knew that he was going to get into the Hall of Fame. It was a given. He's the greatest shooter of all time. But just something about having that final moment, quote unquote final moment, that cements it for you, right? And maybe stop talking about just the Hall of Fame. You start talking about, is he top 10 all time? Is he top 5 all time, or whatever? And I think with these 3 cats, these rappers, these legends, they've already cemented their legacy for a hip-hop Hall of Fame through their work, through the testament of time, of them still being relevant, of them still being the cream of the crop when you talk about what's new. When you talk about what's new and who's the best, sure, much younger hip-hop fans may look to the, fly-by-night MC of the drill rapper of the week, right? But they know, like I know, you move on from them after that first hit single. Whereas Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar consistently give you reasons to say why they are the top of the mountain when it comes to this hip-hop thing. And it has to be a newer generation of rappers who carry that torch that they kept lit all this time. Right now, they still own it when they drop. When Drake drops, when J. Cole drops, and when Kendrick drops, everyone pays attention. There's a reason for that. So let's look really quickly at why. Why them? Why are they the three legends? Well, let's just start with the obvious, right? Drake is who he is, what he is, because he makes music that crosses genres of music. He just literally put out a house record, an album that's a house album. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here just for hip hop only. And honestly, I'm probably a bigger fan of Drake's non-hip hop music than I am of his hip hop music. But he's able to do both. And he's been doing it for a while. And he has a couple of albums that are great. Some may call them classics. But he has a body of work over the test of time of being successful at making music. And regardless of whether you're a big fan or you like a song or two or whatever, he has put in the work. As an MC, right? He's had battles. A couple of battles. Drake. He's had hit records come out of nowhere. Records that don't really sound like much when you first hear them, but then you realize, maybe my expectations are over here when he's dropping something over there. That's kind of a sign of greatness, right? Greatness in hip hop isn't them always giving you what you expect and it's great. Sometimes it's not what you expect and it's great. And that brings me to Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is not that predictable when it comes to him releasing music. Good Kid, Mad City was a very dope album, classic in my mind. But then he drops another classic into Pimp a Butterfly, which is completely different from what you got in Good Kid, Mad City. And he goes on to create Damn, and now he has this new album. And it's easy enough to say that Kendrick Lamar does not have a project that is whack. The other two, you may like one less than others. Some you may call whack. We have. But Kendrick Lamar is consistent with quality music. That being the beats he chooses, the artists and musicians he chooses to work with, the lyrics, and more importantly, the concepts. Because you can get concept fatigue from an artist. Like you might feel like, yeah, I like Good Kid, Mad City so much, I wish he would go back to doing stuff like that. But then you realize he kind of is. But he's wrapping it up in these concepts and these messages that they appear certain ways when you first hear them, and then when you hear the lyrics, and then when you hear them within the context of the entire album, it's a aha moment for you. Kendrick's a legend. Drake's a legend. J. Cole had a very bumpy ride, right? To me, that first album did not live up to the expectations that were set with his mixtape run prior to him signing to Roc Nation. And it was a little disappointing because it felt like they wanted him to be Roc Nation's version of Drake. That's what it felt like to me. But then he dropped Born Sinner. And Born Sinner did both for him, right? It gave him radio play that he would achieve with his debut, don't get it twisted. But also, it gave you more of that mixtape J. Cole, the reason why you liked him, the reason why he was one of the five. And over the years, hit or miss, he has albums that people rock with and people anticipate him. And I believe Forest Hill, 2014 Forest Hill Drive, is a classic. Not because it went platinum with no features. Congratulations, others have done it. I'm talking about history now. But nevertheless, it didn't look like it was going to go that route for him. See, when you have a first album out the gate, that kind of disappoints some of your core fans a little bit. You know, not crazy. It wasn't whack. But I know for me personally, a little bit of a disappointment. And the second album brings them back. But the third album ends the game, ends the debate of whether or not you belong here. So when you look at those three individuals and their impact on the hip-hop game, how much older heads in the hip-hop game, whether it be rappers that you know or fans, when they name the top three, if they don't know anybody else, they know Kendrick, Drake, and J. Cole. I think that was bars. Maybe not. And I think their body of work, their impact, the battle scars as a rapper, BT ciphers, all kinds of craziness. When you look back on their careers, if their careers all ended right now, you would look upon their highlights glowingly. And you would say they belong in the Hall of Fame based off their body of work and their impact on the hip-hop game. In a lot of ways, they helped drive the culture forward in many ways. And though some may not feel like Drake does enough hip-hop to be considered in that manner, I think between the hip-hop he's done that is dope, and he, out of these three, is the main one who's battle rapped, right? A couple of MCs for real, whether you felt he won or lost. Meek, Joe Budden, you know, Common, right? Pusha T. These people could spit. And the dude who's singing battled them. And he's still successful and he's still impactful. So there's enough to be said about each of these artists to comfortably refer to them as legends. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok at Vegas World INC. And if you would like to become a supporter of this podcast, visit patreon.com/hiphopnow or just click the link in the description of this episode. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.